What's going on, world? DS1 Ross. I'm back here on Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Black History Month Series 2018. Shout out to everybody who's going to tune in tonight. Shout out to everybody who just tuned into the last show. The second Black historians was the Harlem Hellfighters. And now we're going to do it again tonight on Sheep Stay Sleep TV with number 3. And we're going back to Harlem. We're going back to Harlem, y'all. Harlem, New York, once again. The Harlem Writers Guild. The Harlem Writers Guild. And what made me find the Harlem's Writers Guild, because I was looking to speak about a specific person, and come to find out that this brother was a well-renowned writer back in his time also, was something I didn't know. So tonight we're going to get into the Harlem Writers Guild, family. As I said in the last show, us black people, we were great in everything. Everything. We were great. So this series is here to uplift and empower us, not only the parents, but mainly our children. Because a lot of us millennials and baby boomers, well, I'm not going to say baby boomers, that's a little too old, but the millennials and the Gen X's, a lot of us have children now that are, teenagers or preteens. And I noticed that a lot of the preteens today, they have low self-esteem. It's a high suicide rate. It's a total disconnect from their history. It's a total disconnect from empowerment, strength. It's a total disconnect with our children. And with this series, I'm just trying to reconnect our children back, not only to us, but to their history. And maybe to inform us too, because like I said, I'm learning as I'm going along and I'm doing these Black historians. I'm learning a lot myself. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I really, really do. This is Black History Month Series 2018. Like I said, y'all could check out the Black History Month Series 2017. It's on my channel. I did 10 Black historians last year, and I will be doing 10 this year. So shout out to everybody. If you're coming in, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share the show. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to Sheep Stay Sleep TV. I appreciate all the love, man. I really, really do. And I'm gonna just say this before I start the show. Like I said before, what made me come up with this whole idea of coming up with a Black History Month series on my channel is, as I go by the motto, sheep stay sleep also, is because I noticed that a lot of our people in society are just followers, and we're like zombies. We just follow what we're told, and we're going off of this programming that was implemented into us. And a lot of us really don't understand the programming that was implemented into us because of the lack of knowledge. And not just the lack of knowledge of knowing that, we were part of a social engineering project, but just the lack of knowledge of who we are, the knowledge of self. And I have to thank, my family and the Nation of Islam for that. Also, the 5% Nation, because from young, I was taught to have knowledge of self, to know who I am, to know my history and know where we come from, and to be proud, to be a proud black man, to have discipline, to have self-control, to be militant. I learned a lot of those things from young, and as you get older, you stray away from a lot of the teachings, you know, but as always, you're gonna come back to what you know. You're gonna come back to your foundation. And this is why I created this series, because we must set that foundation for our children to be black and be proud. And to be black and to be proud is to just love yourself and to love your people. And see, if you come from that standpoint, you would always want the best for your people. You don't have to hate nobody. You don't have to despise other people. Just love yourself and love your people and support your people, because that's what every other nationality do. That's what all they do. They just love their people and proud of who they are and represent that. But I think our problem is we don't want to be proud of who we are because of the constant propaganda that's pushed towards us to not to be proud of who we are, because of the images that we see. And a lot of our children are having low self-esteem. you know they they're not motivated, and that's because they don't see anything good in being black. They don't see pride, they don't see bravery, they don't see courage, they don't see success, they don't see resilience. And there's plenty of that in our history. There's plenty of that in our history, family. There's plenty of it. So my job is to uncover some of that. We're not going to just go with the regular faces that they put out there to indoctrinate our children with. We have a large history, a world history. Our children need to know and understand that. So the third freedom fighters I want to talk about tonight is the Harlem Writers Guild. See, we were great in many facets in society. As y'all can see, we did our thing in war. We did our thing in music. We did our thing in sports. So now we're going to talk about press, writing. We had some of the greatest writers too. So the Harlem Writers Guild, family. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to the people watching. You know, I'll share my screen. And of course, this is from the source. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica, Britannica.com. Let me make sure y'all can see this. Okay, y'all can see it. The Harlem Writers Guild, formerly The Harlem Writers Club, 1950 to 1952, was a group of African American writers established in New York City. In 1950, as the Harlem Writers Club by ambitious young Black authors who felt excluded from the mainstream literary culture and who sought to express ethnic experiences in history in their work. You see, so once again, dealing with oppression, dealing with prejudice, because we're in 1950. You know, my dad was born in the 60s, and he said, you know, when he went to school in the 70s, he still had to deal with prejudice and racism. So I know back in the 50s, they dealt with it too. So as you can see, we made something from nothing because we were always ostracized. You know, we were always put on a back burner or basically tried to be put in the basement with everything that we've done. You know, and this is a concerted effort by people for us not to know our history, for our children today not to care about the greatness of our people. See, they did a great job with hiding certain information about people who were great and things that we've done. This is why a lot of our children today want to just go into sports and entertainment because that's what they promoted to them as being Black and to be great and successful. So you don't have a lot of children growing up wanting to be writers. You see, you're almost looked down upon. But this is why we have the Harlem Writers Club here to show our children that you can become a writer, you could become an author, and you can be great at it because your predecessors were great. So shout out to the Harlem's Writers Club. I'm gonna read that again. Harlem Writers Guild, formerly the Harlem Writers Club, a group of African American writers established in New York City in 1950 as the Harlem Writers Club by ambitious. A lot of our young Black people are not ambitious no more. They're not seeking anything anymore. They're not ambitious. Notice with the Hellfighters, they were brave. With bravery comes ambition also. With ambition comes bravery. By ambitious young Black authors who felt excluded from the mainstream literary culture and who sought to express ethnic experiences in history in their work. You see? So they didn't want them to be in the mainstream telling our story, telling our history. They didn't want that because they know what us and our children knowing our history, it empowers us. It gives us a sense of direction. Unlike their predecessors, the generation of African American writers who came of age in the 1950s were able to interact freely with their white peers. Some of them had attended prestigious universities. Others joined white-led writing workshops in New York's Greenwich Village. Such experiences, however, led many blacks to conclude that white critics, however progressive, could not fully appreciate African American literature. See, white critics. Likewise, the success that established black authors such as Langston Hughes had enjoyed during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 30s seemed unobtainable to a new generation of writers. You see, so they felt more pressure. They felt more pressured. John Henry Clark. I wonder if y'all knew that John Henry Clark was part of the Harlem Writers Club, because I was going to do a show on John Henry Clark. But come to find out, he was one of our great writers. You see, I didn't know that. I just looked at him as a person who had a lot of knowledge on our history. And I knew that he wrote books, but I didn't know that he was an esteemed writer and that he was part of the Harlem Writers Club. So we had John Henry Clark, Rosa Guy, and John Oliver Killings were among the emerging talents who sought an alternative forum in which to develop their craft. Killings took writing classes at both Columbia and New York universities in the late 1940s. At Columbia, he studied grammar and composition and gravitated toward courses taught by politically and socially conscious professors. You see, so if any of our children are going to be writers, they need to learn grammar. And this is a problem I notice a lot of our children suffer from. We cannot write properly. We cannot write properly. See, when I was in school, we wrote a lot of essays. So we were taught grammar. We were taught how to proofread. We were taught how to compose a paragraph. You know, they're not really teaching that in a lot of schools anymore. That's why our children write so poorly. You see, and now with the emergence of social media, they really write poorly. Their grammar's off, the spelling is off, no punctuations, none of that stuff. But if our children are going to go into writing, these are the things that they really need to focus on: grammar and composition. In 1950, he invited other African American authors to meet in Harlem, to meet in a Harlem storefront office on the corner of 125th Street and Lenox to critique each other's work. You see? Of the first participants, only Clark had published a book, The Boy Who Painted Christ Black, in 1948. The group, known as the Harlem Writers Club, continued to meet under Killings' leadership in the homes of early members including Aaron Douglas, Julian Mayfield, and Paul Marshall. In 1952, the group changed its name to the Harlem Writers Guild. to emphasize the craft of writing. You see, so these people set a blueprint. They set a blueprint. That's very, very important. Very, very important. They set a blueprint for us today to emphasize the craft of writing. We must know how to write. We must know how to write, family. And there's no excuse for us not knowing how to write properly. You know, everybody likes to talk about John Henry Clark and, you know, all the history that he knew. But I wonder if they knew he was an expert at writing, that he was one of the ones who led a group to emphasize the craft of writing to our people. Let's continue. During the group's early years, Killings published Youngblood in 1954, a novel chronicling the Youngblood family struggle with racism and oppression in Georgia. It was the first novel to be published by a Harlem Writers Guild member. Another early landmark publication to emerge from a member was Guy's novel Bird at My Window in 1966, a cultural critique of growing up and surviving in 1950s Harlem while facing poverty and racism. You see? So we wrote out of our oppression. You see? We wrote out of our oppression came our greatest writers. Out of our oppression came our greatest athletes, our greatest musicians. This is out of oppression. You see? So this should motivate us and motivate our children. Out of our oppression, we become great. Diamonds are created through immense pressure. Lon or Lionel Elder III, a playwright and screenwriter who had joined the Guild soon after its founding, wrote his account of a family making their way in 1950s Harlem in the play Ceremonies in Dark Old Men, which was produced by the newly formed Negro Ensemble Company in 1969 and later adapted for television in 1975. His screenplay, in 1972, adapted from William H. Armstrong's novel Sunder in 1969, was nominated for an Academy Award. You see? So we've been setting records since then. Academy Awards, best writers, all of this stuff that you see a lot of these Caucasians winning now. We was winning this stuff and being nominated for these things early. You see? But see, we didn't win a lot of those things due to racism, due to prejudice. It wasn't because we weren't talented. It wasn't because we didn't know what we were doing. We weren't good at what we were doing. We were the best. And some of us were the first. was nominated for an Academy Award, making Elder the first African American to be nominated in that category. The first African American to be nominated in that category. You see? We need to be proud of this. So if your daughter's growing up and she writes poetry and she want to write books, encourage her. Encourage her. Encourage him. Don't make them feel, you know, don't make them feel no kind of way. Because they can be great at this. Because they come from greatness. You see? We come from greatness. See, we can't just talk that shit when we're faced with an argument talking about other people. We have to be able to go and pull these people out in our history. And this is what this series is about. To pull these people out. So when they want to talk about the greatest writers, you can go to the Harlem Writers Guild. You see? You can go to Lionel Elder the Third. You see? Who was the first African American to be nominated for what? An Academy Award. See? See, don't just stand there and be braggadocious, but don't really have the information. Let's pull out the history and let's show it. And let's show it. And let's prove this greatness to us. Because the world know we're great. We need to prove it to ourselves. So we can start loving ourselves again. See, having our history connects us back to us loving ourselves, us understanding our struggle, and knowing that our struggle gave us power to get up and to do something. And to understand that that's what our people did. They didn't sit back and cry and say, oh, the white man, the white man, the white man. As you can see, they dealt with white critics. Everybody who I've came to you so far in this history has dealt with white oppression. But they didn't sit back and cry about it. They didn't sit back and call them devils and say we hate them. They didn't do that. You know what they did? They used that energy to motivate them to prove to the world who we are. You see, this is why these people are afraid of us. Because they revere us and they know our power. They know our history. Do we know our history? See, you wonder why they are so afraid of black men? Because they know how great we are. They know how great our minds are. We're not just physically strong, we're mentally strong. We're the greatest strategists of the world. We're some of the greatest writers, the greatest athletes, the greatest musicians. This is why we're seen as a threat. Not because we got goddamn muscles. You see? Sidney Poitier, Amari Baraka, Ozzie Davis, and Harry Belafonte also joined the guild in the 1950s. Y'all all know who Sidney Poitier is. If not, y'all should look him up too. He was one of our greatest movie guys. He was Denzel before it was a Denzel. He was Will Smith before it was a Will Smith. Sidney Poitier. Members contributed to various African American journals, such as The Crisis, the official magazine of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and Freedom Ways, the central publication of the American Civil Rights Movement. See, so we had our own publications. We had our own magazines that were really created by us and not bought off like Ebony magazine, like the Source magazine, not like those. By the late 1950s and into the 60s, many guild members wanted to use their talents to affect social change. You see? You see? Everything that we done was for a purpose. And it was to show the world that we need to be treated equally as everybody else. Stop ostracizing us. Stop putting us down. Stop not giving us the credit for what we built. Stop lowballing us. See, we never did what we did in history to say we were better than anyone. It was about equality. And that's not selling out. That's what our ancestors did. We wanted to be treated like human beings because we was treated less than human. You see, they wanted to affect social change. You see, social change. Shout out to everybody in the chat. They used their meetings to discuss topics that transcended the literary. Several members at the time, were also union organizers or members of the progressive and communist parties. But issues of race continued to unite many of the participants. See, there we go again, uniting under oppression to become what? Progressive. Progression. That's what it was about. They endured discrimination in their literary endeavors, as well as in their daily lives. Some of the members who increasingly resided not in Harlem, but in Greenwich Village, on Manhattan's Lower East Side, and elsewhere, often faced hostile landlords and neighbors. Guild meetings thus served as supportive enclaves in the new neighborhoods. You see? So what they started to do was they basically became social activists, and they came together to help the upcoming generations so they can learn how to deal with this prejudice and this racism. You see? They became social activists. At meetings, members exchanged information about freedom rides, sittings, and marches. And marches. The visit of Cuban communist leader Fidel Castro to New York in 1960 became a cause celebre. In later years, Guild members united behind controversial Black Muslim leader Malcolm X, while also organizing to oppose the racist policy of apartheid in South Africa and supporting independent struggles in Angola and Mozambique. I think that is, if I'm pronouncing it right. So you see what they did with their social activism. You see what they did. And they marched and they protested. You see? They backed Malcolm X. Malcolm X was backed by these people. So they used their writing skills to help promote through media, which is propaganda. We had our own propaganda machine because we wrote about our social ills. You see? See, we like to talk about propaganda in a bad way, but that's because propaganda has affected us in a negative way. That's because we haven't had a chance to have our own propaganda. And this is why I've been real upset with a lot of these people who's been talking mess about this Black Panther movie. Because that's Black propaganda. You see, that's all media is. It's propaganda. So why would you speak against Black propaganda, against Black media, against people putting our story in a movie to help shape and mold the minds of Black people? That's what that movie is doing. But what are we doing? We're rejecting it. And we're rejecting it because we are afraid to have our own propaganda. We are afraid to affect social change, but we cry about it every day. I hear people make plenty of live streams crying about propaganda and how it's affected us. All this white propaganda, but then you shit on Black Panther. But I didn't hear none of y'all shitting on Iron Man. I didn't hear none of y'all shitting on Superman, Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man. When those movies empower the Caucasian youth, it gives them hope. A little kid growing up makes them feel invincible, makes them feel intelligent, makes them feel rich, makes them want to go become scientists. But now here we have our own propaganda here, and we're rejecting it. And this is why we're talking about the Harlem Writers Guild. So we can understand how important us having our own media and propaganda is. We need to push our story and show our children what made us great and why we are considered great all over the world. And that's what this Black History Month series is. It's my form of propaganda to uplift our children. Because we keep complaining about how everything is against us, but we not doing nothing about it. And that's what this series is. It's doing something about it. It's doing something about it. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure y'all hit the like button. In 1961, a group of authors inspired by the Harlem Writers Guild, a group of authors inspired by the Harlem Writers Guild. So that shows that they made change. They made an effect on the people. Founded the Umbra Workshop to advance African American literary independence in the arts. The Umbra Workshop was based on the Lower East Side, signifying a break with the literary traditions of Harlem. Umbra participants moved toward a more radical Black separatist view of American politics and culture. Some members of the Harlem Writers Guild, among them Baraka and Davis, also endorsed the idea of literature as a revolutionary tool. See? So later, the influence made us become more independent. And it showed the effect of us separating ourselves so we can stand out to our people. You see? And some of the, like they said, some of them agreed with it. By the late 1960s, a number of guild members had found success within the mainstream. During those years, the guild sponsored conferences and book release parties that drew up to 1,000 attendees. Killings and Clark, John Henry Clark, the one who name is mentioned mostly in the conscious community, who remained active members, organized debates in collaboration with the faculty at the New School for Social Research, now the New School in New York City. They also worked to introduce Black Studies programs to university curricula. Membership in the Harlem Writers Guild continued to expand in the 1970s and throughout the next 3 decades. In 1983, founder Killings estimated that guild members had published more than 400 literary works. Louise Merriweather, Terry McMillan, and Maya Angelou were among the growing number of guild members who enjoyed critical acclaim for their work. So Maya Angelou was part of the Harlem's Writers Guild. Terry McMillan. These is books when I was young that I saw my mom reading. Her friends were reading. Terry McMillan, Maya Angelou. In the 1990s, the Guild sponsored a weekly television program, In Our Own Words, that was hosted by Guild director William H. Banks Jr. and featured Guild writers. It also organized writers' workshops in the New York public libraries and public schools. The Guild established the Harlem Writers Guild Press imprint in 2000. And in 2005, Banks published the anthology Beloved Harlem, which included writing by Guild members. You see? You see? But we always like to talk about, oh, the white press, and they're always painting the pictures of us so bad. But when are we gonna bring our own press back? See, this is one thing I can respect about the Nation of Islam. They have their own newspaper. They have their own press. You see? So they're getting their word out to their people. You see? Because press is very important. Because that goes back into media and propaganda. And that's how you socially engineer people. What the hell you think the television is? Upholding its mission to members use the written word to preserve the unique experiences and heritage of African Americans. Let's read that again, fam. Let's read that again. Upholding its mission to help members use the written word to preserve the unique experiences and heritage of African Americans. You see? So they knew the importance of writing. They knew the importance of us having our own news, having our own papers, our own magazines, because they know that this is the stuff that programs us. And they wanted to program us with Black experiences. They wanted to shape and mold the Black thinking. You see? The Harlem Writers Guild continued to provide support and publicity for emerging Black authors in the 21st century. Wow, man. This is powerful. This is powerful, man. This is powerful. This is very, very important. Very important. Very, very important. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I appreciate y'all for listening in. But this is very important, y'all. It's important for us to have our own media, our own publications. Very important. Very, very important. We need more Black authors to be re-emerging. And we don't just need to write fictional stuff. We don't just need to write, drug stories and stuff like that. We need to write books about social things, the social ills that's going on today. We need that, family, because that's what shapes and molds the thinking of our people. Media, news, television. This is why I named it Sheep Stay Sleep TV. You see? So shout out to everybody who's tuning in. Shout out to everybody who has tuned in. I appreciate it. I really do. I appreciate it. So let me give some shout outs to the people in the chat, and then we're going to close out, family. Shout out to my sister Majestic. Shout out to Black Beauty. Shout out to Sheena. Shout out to Elm City. Shout out to the Thunder God, Zeus Flippy. Shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all support. I appreciate y'all listening. Make sure y'all like, share, subscribe. Make sure y'all share this. And if y'all can, please, let y'all children listen to this. Because this is what I'm really doing it for, y'all. Like I said, I'm learning as I'm going with this series, man. Just like I did last year. You know. But please allow your children to listen and let them get some of our history. Maybe it can uplift them. It can motivate them. You know, we need more writers. We need more writers, family. So, like I said, shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody for tuning in tonight. If you're just coming in, you could catch the playback right here on Sheep Stay Sleep TV. So I'm your host, DS1 Ross. You just tuned in to Sheep Stay Sleep TV. This is the Black History Month series of 2018. This is the third historian or historians, the Black Writers Guild. The Black Writers Guild, y'all. Harlem Writers Guild. Harlem Writers Club. So I appreciate the support and the love. It's DS1 Ross. Shout out to everybody. Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Remember, we got to heal before we build. Heal before we build. Because if we try to build before we heal, we'll continue to destroy ourselves. Self-inflicted wounds. We don't have time for that. We need to worry about progress, becoming progressive. And us knowing our history helps us heal from a lot of things. It helps us look at what we're dealing with now in another way. It gives us hope. It gives us motivation. It gives us self-esteem. And all of those things helps us progress. So again, I appreciate the love and support. DS1 Ross, Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Y'all have a good night. I will be back tomorrow with 2 more historians. Peace out, y'all.